In 1945, as Allied forces liberated concentration camps and witnessed the full horror of Nazi atrocities, another story was quietly unfolding in the shadows of victory. While the world demanded justice for war criminals, American intelligence agencies were secretly recruiting those same criminals for a new war, the Cold War against the Soviet Union. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented history, revealed through decades of declassified documents, congressional investigations, and journalistic exposés. What you're about to discover challenges the moral clarity of America's victory in World War II and exposes how the fight against one evil led to collaboration with another. The Central Intelligence Agency, established in 1947, inherited a network of Nazi collaborators already assembled by its predecessor, the Office of Strategic Services. These weren't reformed individuals seeking redemption. Many were unrepentant war criminals who saw cooperation with America as their ticket to avoiding prosecution and continuing their ideological crusade against communism. If you're intrigued by stories buried beneath official history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us bring more truth to light. The recruitment began even before Germany's surrender. American intelligence officers tasked with gathering information about Soviet capabilities and intentions quickly realized that Nazi Germany's intelligence apparatus contained invaluable knowledge about the Eastern Front, Soviet military capabilities, and communist networks across Eastern Europe. The moral implications of employing mass murderers seemed secondary to the strategic advantages they offered. By 1947, hundreds of former Nazi agents, SS officers, and collaborators were on the American intelligence payroll. They operated under new identities, received U.S. government protection, and in many cases, were granted American citizenship. Their crimes were buried, their victims forgotten, and their expertise weaponized against the Soviet Union. This transformation of enemies into allies represents one of the most morally complex chapters in American intelligence history. The most famous example of Nazi recruitment was Operation Paperclip, which brought over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the United States between 1945 and 1959. While officially focused on capturing German rocket and weapons technology, the operation became a systematic program for rehabilitating war criminals. Wernher von Braun, the poster child of America's space program, exemplifies this moral compromise. Von Braun had been a member of the Nazi Party and the SS. His V-2 rockets, which later propelled Americans to the moon, were built using slave labor from concentration camps. An estimated 20,000 prisoners died producing his weapons, yet he was welcomed to America as a hero and eventually became director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. The paperwork tells the story of deliberate deception. Intelligence officers systematically scrubbed Nazi scientists' backgrounds, removing references to SS membership, war crimes, and slave labor usage. Former Nazi Party members became German specialists in official documents. SS officers were reclassified as technical experts who had been forced to join Nazi organizations. Dr. Kurt Blome, who conducted biological warfare experiments on concentration camp prisoners, was initially arrested as a war criminal. After his acquittal at Nuremberg, not because he was innocent, but because his research was deemed valuable, the U.S. Army Chemical Corps secretly hired him to continue his biological weapons research. The same experiments that horrified Allied prosecutors at Nuremberg were now funded by American taxpayers. The pattern was consistent. Valuable expertise trumped moral accountability. Scientists who had used human test subjects, engineers who had exploited slave labor, and researchers who had violated every principle of medical ethics were granted new lives in America in exchange for their knowledge. Operation Paperclip wasn't just about rockets and weapons. It was about establishing the precedent that American national security interests could justify collaboration with war criminals. This precedent would shape CIA operations for decades to come. Quick reminder, if you're finding this journey into Cold War secrets compelling, hit that like button, subscribe, and share the video with others who love deep history. While Operation Paperclip focused on scientists An even more sinister collaboration was developing in the realm of intelligence. General Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's chief intelligence officer on the Eastern Front, offered the Americans something irresistible: a complete network of Soviet spies and an intimate knowledge of Soviet military capabilities. Gehlen had spent years building intelligence networks across Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. His agents had infiltrated communist organizations, mapped Soviet military installations, and developed extensive files on Soviet personnel. When Germany surrendered, Gehlen buried his intelligence archives in the Bavarian Alps and waited for the Americans to find him. The offer was simple. In exchange for protection from war crimes prosecution and continued American funding, Gehlen would turn his entire network over to U.S. intelligence. What the Americans got wasn't just information. It was a ready-made espionage organization with operatives already in place across the Soviet sphere of influence. The Gehlen Organization, as it became known, was essentially a Nazi intelligence service operating under American protection and funding. Many of its operatives were former SS officers, Gestapo agents, and Eastern European collaborators who had participated in mass murder during the war. Now they were American assets, gathering intelligence on Soviet activities while hiding their criminal pasts. The CIA provided the organization with millions of dollars in funding, secure communications equipment, and operational protection. In return, Gehlen's network provided intelligence reports on Soviet military movements, political developments in Eastern Europe, and communist activities in Western Europe. The arrangement seemed mutually beneficial until questions arose about the quality and motivation of the intelligence being provided. Many of Gehlen's agents had obvious incentives to exaggerate Soviet threats and capabilities. Former Nazis living under American protection needed to justify their continued value to their protectors. This led to intelligence reports that consistently overestimated Soviet military strength and aggressive intentions, contributing to Cold War tensions and military spending that might have been unnecessary. Perhaps no case better illustrates the moral bankruptcy of CIA Nazi recruitment than the agency's relationship with Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon. Barbie had been responsible for the torture and murder of thousands of French resistance fighters and the deportation of Jewish children to death camps. After the war, instead of facing justice, he became a valued CIA asset. The recruitment of Barbie began in 1947, when U.S. Army intelligence officers discovered his extensive knowledge of communist networks in post-war Europe. Barbie had spent years interrogating captured resistance fighters and had developed detailed files on communist operatives across France. This information was considered invaluable for American efforts to prevent communist takeover in Western Europe. Army intelligence, and later the CIA, not only employed Barbie, but actively protected him from French authorities seeking his extradition for war crimes. When French investigators came close to capturing him, American intelligence helped him escape to Bolivia, where he lived under a new identity for decades. The protection of Barbie wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic program to relocate valuable Nazi agents to South America when their presence in Europe became problematic. This rat line operation, coordinated between the CIA and various Catholic organizations, helped hundreds of war criminals escape justice in exchange for continued intelligence cooperation. Barbie's case became public knowledge only in the 1980s, when French investigators finally tracked him down in Bolivia and secured his extradition. His 1987 trial in Lyon revealed not only his wartime atrocities, but also the extent of his post-war collaboration with American intelligence. Documents presented at trial showed that the CIA had known about his war crimes from the beginning, but considered his intelligence value more important than justice for his victims. The Barbie affair sparked congressional investigations and media exposés that revealed the broader pattern of CIA collaboration with Nazi war criminals. What emerged was a picture of an intelligence agency so focused on fighting communism that it was willing to employ mass murderers and protect them from prosecution. The CIA's relationship with Nazi agents extended far beyond individual recruitment cases. The agency developed elaborate networks, known as rat lines, to help valuable war criminals escape prosecution and relocate to safe havens in South America and other regions where they could continue serving American intelligence interests. These escape routes were sophisticated operations involving forged documents, safe houses, and coordination with sympathetic organizations. The most notorious rat line operated through Rome, where certain Vatican officials provided assistance to fleeing Nazis. While the Vatican's involvement was often motivated by anti-communist sentiment rather than sympathy for Nazism, the result was the same. War criminals escaped justice. The CIA's rat line operations were revealed through declassified documents released in the 1990s and 2000s. These files showed that the agency had helped relocate hundreds of former Nazis to Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, and other South American countries. Many of these individuals continued working for American intelligence agencies, providing information about communist activities in their new countries. Adolf Eichmann, one of the primary architects of the Holocaust, used these rat lines to escape to Argentina in 1950. While there's no evidence that Eichmann worked directly for the CIA, his escape route was facilitated by the same networks the agency used for its own assets. This demonstrates how the CIA's rat line operations inadvertently helped even the most notorious war criminals avoid prosecution. The consequences of these operations extended far beyond the Cold War. Many of the Nazi war criminals relocated to South America became involved in local politics and military organizations. Some participated in brutal military dictatorships that tortured and killed thousands of civilians. Others helped establish networks that would later be used for drug trafficking and other criminal activities. The rat lines also had diplomatic consequences. When countries like West Germany and Israel began hunting war criminals in the 1960s and 1970s, they often found that their targets were living under American protection in South American countries. This created tensions with allies and complicated efforts to bring war criminals to justice. The full extent of CIA collaboration with Nazi war criminals remained hidden for decades, protected by classification systems and intelligence secrecy. The first major break in this wall of silence came in the 1970s, during a period of unprecedented scrutiny of American intelligence agencies. The Church Committee, officially known as the United States Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with respect to intelligence activities, was established in 1975 to investigate intelligence agency abuses. While the committee's public hearings focused primarily on domestic surveillance and assassination plots, its classified investigations revealed extensive CIA relationships with war criminals. The committee's staff discovered documents showing that the CIA had knowingly employed individuals with documented involvement in war crimes, mass murder, and other atrocities. These revelations were so sensitive that most remained classified for decades, with only heavily redacted summaries released to the public. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, investigative journalists and historians continued uncovering evidence of CIA Nazi connections. The Klaus Barbie case, which became public in 1983, provided the first detailed look at how the agency had protected a known war criminal. Subsequent investigations revealed similar patterns involving dozens of other individuals. The breakthrough came in 1998, when Congress passed the Nazi War Crimes Disclosure Act, which mandated the declassification of government documents related to Nazi war criminals and their post-war activities. This legislation was prompted by growing public awareness of the issue and pressure from Holocaust survivors and their families. The declassified documents, released over several years starting in 1999, provided unprecedented insight into CIA operations. They revealed not only individual cases of war criminal recruitment, but also systematic policies that prioritized intelligence value over moral considerations. Internal CIA memos discussed the usefulness of war criminals and debated how to manage the political liabilities of their employment. Perhaps most damning were documents showing that CIA officials were aware of their assets' criminal backgrounds from the beginning. These weren't cases of discovering war crimes after recruitment. They were deliberate decisions to employ individuals despite knowledge of their atrocities. The revelations about CIA collaboration with Nazi war criminals sparked a broader reckoning about American moral leadership during the Cold War. How could a nation that had fought against Nazi tyranny justify employing the agents of that tyranny? How could the pursuit of national security interests override fundamental principles of justice and human rights? The standard justification offered by intelligence officials was pragmatic. The Cold War represented an existential threat to Western civilization, and defeating that threat required using every available resource, regardless of moral qualms. From this perspective, employing former Nazis was a necessary evil in service of a greater good. Critics argued that this reasoning was fundamentally flawed. By employing war criminals, the United States compromised its moral authority and legitimized the very ideologies it claimed to oppose. The message sent to the world was that American principles were negotiable when national interests were at stake. The long-term consequences of these policies extended far beyond the Cold War. Many of the intelligence techniques and operational procedures developed through collaboration with Nazi agents became standard practice for the CIA. The willingness to overlook moral considerations in pursuit of intelligence advantages established precedents that would influence American intelligence operations for decades. The impact on victims was particularly tragic. Holocaust survivors and their families discovered that their tormentors were living comfortable lives under American protection, often with new identities and citizenship. The very government that had helped liberate the concentration camps was now protecting those who had operated them. Perhaps most troubling was the realization that the intelligence provided by these Nazi assets was often of questionable value. Many former SS officers and Gestapo agents had obvious incentives to exaggerate threats and provide information that would keep them valuable to their American handlers. This led to intelligence assessments that may have prolonged Cold War tensions unnecessarily. The declassified documents also revealed internal debates within the CIA about the wisdom of these policies. Some officers questioned the morality and effectiveness of employing war criminals, but their concerns were generally overruled by operational considerations and bureaucratic momentum. The story of CIA collaboration with Nazi agents represents one of the darkest chapters in American intelligence history. It demonstrates how noble ends, defeating fascism, containing communism, can be corrupted by ignoble means. The consequences of these compromises extended far beyond the individuals directly involved, shaping American foreign policy and intelligence operations for generations. The declassified documents reveal that the CIA employed at least several hundred former Nazis and Nazi collaborators between 1945 and 1975. These individuals included concentration camp guards, SS officers, Gestapo agents, and Eastern European collaborators responsible for mass murder and other atrocities. Many received American citizenship, government pensions, and lifelong protection from prosecution. The intelligence value of this collaboration remains questionable. While some Nazi agents provided useful information about Soviet capabilities and intentions, much of their reporting was self-serving and potentially misleading. Former SS officers living under American protection had obvious incentives to exaggerate communist threats and provide intelligence that would maintain their value to their handlers. The moral cost was enormous. By protecting war criminals from prosecution, the United States undermined international efforts to establish accountability for atrocities. This sent a message to future perpetrators of mass murder that cooperation with powerful nations could provide immunity from justice. The operations also had unintended consequences that lasted decades. Many Nazi war criminals relocated to South America through CIA rat lines became involved in military dictatorships and criminal organizations. The networks established to protect them were later used for drug trafficking, arms smuggling, and other illegal activities. Perhaps most importantly, the Nazi recruitment programs established dangerous precedents for American intelligence operations. The willingness to overlook moral considerations in pursuit of operational advantages became embedded in CIA culture and influenced subsequent operations in Vietnam, Latin America, and elsewhere. The revelations that emerged in the 1990s and 2000s prompted important reforms in intelligence oversight and accountability. Congressional legislation now requires periodic review of classified operations, and intelligence agencies face greater scrutiny of their human rights practices. However, many observers argue that these reforms remain insufficient to prevent similar moral compromises in future crises. The story serves as a powerful reminder that democratic nations can lose their moral bearings when fear and pragmatism override principle. The fight against one form of evil, Soviet communism, led American intelligence agencies to embrace another form of evil, Nazi war criminals. The consequences of that choice continue to reverberate today. Understanding this history is crucial for preventing similar moral failures in contemporary intelligence operations. As new threats emerge and new crises demand action, the temptation to compromise fundamental values in pursuit of security will undoubtedly arise again. The lessons of CIA collaboration with Nazi agents remind us that such compromises exact a price that extends far beyond immediate operational considerations. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new or had your eyes opened, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you bold history every single week.